Hi everyone, Nikki here, back with a brand new video. Now, as I'm recording this video, it is February 13th. And perhaps that's why I subconsciously wanted to sit down and film a part 2 to my What It's Like Being an INTJ Female, but this time more specifically talking about my romantic relationships. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day for all of you who may not know. Um, So this kind of is in the mood, I guess, to that, although it won't be some romantic happy story. I'm afraid my story, my romantic story, hasn't quite ended yet. It hasn't found its conclusion. So this is just sort of me reflecting on past relationships and how it has all come together to give me the ideals and opinions that I have now relating to love and romance. So, as I mentioned in my What It's Like Being an INTJ Female, it was high school that I learned what Myer Briggs was. I got INTJ. I was not interested, 0% interested. I tossed the paper up and I threw it in the trash. I didn't think about it again until many more years later. Maybe if I had, um, it would have lended me a hand, but I wasn't interested in what some paper had to say about me. Should have known then that it was right. But I remember watching my friends fall in and out of love. And I would ask my friends after that relationship ended, did you really love that person? And they would say, no, I don't think so. But a lot of what I was seeing wasn't love. It was something else. It was people chasing the ideals of love, but it wasn't love. Because even when a relationship ends with someone you love, that love doesn't go away, but it does change. So I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. Even the INTJ female that I knew who I was good friends with back then was in and out of relationships, had multiple crushes on people. I couldn't keep up. So that's not really an INTJ thing because some INTJs can date a lot of people and be interested in a lot of people, but some of us can't. And I fall into the can't section. So I haven't dated that many people, and I definitely haven't had a lot of serious relationships. I'm selective, but I'm not selective in a list sort of way where they have to be this, they have to be this. I don't do that. I just have to like you. There just has to be chemistry there. And it's just harder for me to feel that with someone. It's sort of like if I were to go into a bar, I would see that there's people and I would recognize that they would be people, but it's like none of them would have faces. And then all of a sudden I'd turn and I'd connect eyes with someone and they would suddenly have a face. Or like everybody's gray blobs, and I turn and I look at someone and just they're this shining yellow golden disco ball. I don't know. You get the picture. And that's probably not even an INTJ thing. That's another topic. But it's just rare for me to be interested in anyone. Even when I was younger, it was rare for me to be interested in anyone. I didn't have a lot of crushes. Um, I've never really lusted after famous, stars. I just don't feel that in the way that other people do. And if I have to sit down and think about perhaps why that is, I could see some things in my childhood that could have shaped me naturally into who I am now. This actually ties into a question that I got in the comments when someone asked me, what makes an INTJ, more specifically an INTJ female? Like how are you created? What? And I answered that I believe we are just born, we are shaped by our environment. And even when two people go through the similar or the same situation, how we interpret that situation, what that looks and feels like to us, even among INTJs, is different, and it shapes us, even without us knowing. Well, my family is not that typical stereotypical family. My parents' relationship is very toxic and volatile. My dad is a sick man, a lot of demons in his closet that he still hasn't overcome. And I watched it take my mom down with him until she finally had enough of it and put a stop to it. And I lost my dad, and sudden he was there, and then suddenly he wasn't there. And for any child, that leaves a mark on you. But I think for me, it made me very uninterested in people. I've just felt like everyone was going to leave, so why let anybody in the first place? And it kind of put like this film over my eyes where it's like I couldn't even see people. I still struggle with this today. It's still hard for me to let people in. It's still hard for me to want to let people in. I know that I've hurt some people, some very genuine, wonderful men that have wanted to love me, but I wouldn't let them. And it's not really my fault because you can't help if you're not attracted to someone. You can't help if you don't feel that chemistry with someone. You can't force it. You can't make it happen. So while not all of it comes from my childhood, like I just mentioned, I do think parts of it do. That hesitancy, that cautious, suspicious of others nature that I have does stem from that. And it can take people a while to get to know me, like genuinely get to know me, because on the outside, I actually come off very friendly. Um, but when you try to get past that barrier, when you try to get past that wall, it's a frozen wasteland, you know, and it would be unrealistic of me to expect anybody to even want to get through that because you shouldn't have to. I'm not saying that you shouldn't take your time with someone, absolutely, but it shouldn't be a battle just getting to know someone. And I know we INTJs can seem that way, rather you've had the same experiences that I've had or not. A lot of us INTJs can seem that way to people, and I don't resent others for walking away from that, especially if they don't get it and they don't understand it. You're probably not compatible in the first place. You can't force something where it just doesn't fit, but it does create this sense of like loneliness, but loneliness in the sense of you are in a universe full of gray blobs and faceless people. So, going back in time now to my very first love, I was only 13, and you may be thinking, how much can you possibly love someone at 13? Well, the answer is a lot. A lot. More than a 13-year-old should be able to love. But I did. It was real, it was genuine. It was coming off a lot of the trauma and pain and hurt that I still hadn't dealt with what happened with my family. And I harbored a lot of self resentment and a lot of blame for that. So at 13, I was being bullied a lot, but not so much by kids. I can deal with kids, and they'd ask me if I was a witch, and I would just say yes and then stare at them. And that usually scared them, and they'd go away. But when you have your friends' parents tell you that you are going to be just like your father, that you're going to have the same demons, the same issues, and we're going to amount to nothing, that creates some scarring and some wounds. And some that may never even really heal because it's hard to imagine that people can be that cruel to someone, let alone an adult, be that cruel to a child who did nothing, literally did nothing, just walked into their friend's yard, and that's all. So at 13, I just wanted to be loved. Um, so I knew what I felt, and I knew I felt love. But I guess I didn't know what it felt like to be loved back. And he played mind games with me because I didn't know any better. I mean, what 13-year-old really does know any better? But I didn't know any better. I just wanted to experience some form of acceptance from someone just once. And, it this lasted for much longer than it should have, years, and it really stripped away my ability to just be fearless when it came to relationships. Because that's how I approached it. I was fearless. I saw a bunch of faceless people. Suddenly, I saw someone and they seemed to see me right back. And I was like, yes. Well, I was foolish for that. And I was even more foolish for burying all of it deep, deep down into a vault and not dealing with any of it, which led me to my next mistake. My next relationship was probably my most actual serious relationship. We did live together for a time, and is probably my worst relationship all at the same time because he was very controlling, he was very jealous, he was very volatile, and he wanted me to be subservient. He wanted to drag me down with him. Uh, he was spiraling with his own issues, and I refused to budge, and it created a lot of tension. And even though I watched my parents go through what they went through, you know, I didn't think I'd ever go through something so similar, but I did. And the difference between me and my mom is a very strong, aggressive woman. And I'm not saying that I can't be, but it almost seems like I clam up. Um, and again, this relates back to what I witnessed as a child. It's like I just clam up in relationships, and it's so hard for me to be expressive. And this really made this boyfriend that I'm talking about angry. He felt like he couldn't get to me, he felt like he couldn't reach me, and his response was to be aggressive and try to force me to open up, which just made me close even harder. Pushing away his personal issues aside and my personal issues aside, I knew he was a wonderful person, but I had watched with my own parents that you can't force someone to do something that they don't want to do. And he needed to fix himself. I wasn't willing to do it for him. I wasn't going to do it for him. But I hadn't quite realized at this point that I needed to fix myself as well. I was just doing the young. I was just doing the young INTJ thing and burying it deep, 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 deep down because I wanted nothing to do with those emotions. I wanted nothing to do with my trauma. I wanted nothing to do with my pain. And that led to my next mistake. The one and only casual relationship I've ever had. It went on for 3 years, and I saw no one else during this time. And I learned that I cannot do casual. Um, at this point, I just wanted to be someone else. I didn't want to be me anymore. I was sick of being me. Being me was wrong. No one wanted me to be me, so I didn't want to be me. I wasn't going to be accepted if I was me, so I wanted to be someone else. I wanted to be someone cool. I wanted to be someone that was social. I wanted to be just someone that was, popular. And I failed miserably at all of these things. I just ended up making everything worse. My depression got so bad, I lost 10 pounds within about a month and a half. I couldn't eat. My insomnia was awful. My anxiety was awful. I was hardly a functioning human. I was on autopilot. It was bad. It was bad. But things started to turn around when I actually repaired things with my dad. And while it didn't last, this was very pivotal to my growth as a person because when he managed to get clean, I was able to finally forgive myself for things that had nothing to do with me. But children tend to blame themselves. I was able to forgive myself. I was able to accept that he suffered from a sickness that I'll never be able to really understand, that he had to come to the conclusion on his own terms to be clean and stay clean, and that nothing and no one could help him with that. Just like I couldn't help my past boyfriend with that. It's something that they have to overcome pretty much on their own. Um, and for the first time, it was like the film over my eyes was removed. And not only was I able to see inward, I was able to see outward. And I had to stop myself and go, whoa, Nikki, what the heck are you doing? This isn't you. I mean, like, yeah, you're still wearing black, but you'd never wear that. You'd never act this way. You'd never drink this much. You'd never socialize this much. You like people, but you hate people. Like, you'd never do all this. What are you doing? And I cut myself off from everyone and everything except for select few. And I thought I was healed. I thought I was good. I thought I was making progress. And so I felt comfortable getting into my next relationship, which is my most recent relationship. I told you I haven't had that many. This one lasted for only 2 years, maybe almost three, I don't know. But he was the first person that I was with, and I saw the end. I thought that we had a future. And I had realized that my cycle was relationships that I knew would fail. It was a security net for me. It stopped me from ever having to worry that I would be trapped. Because, for even if I'm being honest and vulnerable, even now, I still, in the back of my mind, feel like relationships are a trap, that marriage is a trap, that it's just a way for someone to ensnare you and trap you. I struggle with it. I know that that's not true. It's something I'm working towards. But with this person, with this man, I felt comfortable being me. He wasn't jealous. He wasn't controlling. He didn't mind when I went hours without texting him. I could just tell him, hey, I'm out with friends. And he'd be like, okay, no questions asked. And I loved that. And he's the only one I know his personality type, but I don't want to give it because I don't feel like it has anything to do with why we failed. He ended up becoming very sick, stage 4 kidney disease, sick. He also suffered from very, pretty severe mental health issues, but that didn't really play a role. At least in my opinion, that didn't play a role, and it would be hypocritical of me to have judged him for that. I was not afraid of it, in the slightest. I didn't end that relationship because of his mental health, but I did end it because he forgot me. He forgot me. With everything he had going on, I didn't exist anymore. And he would only remember me long enough to buy me a gift and shove it at me. Literally shove it at me, or he'd throw it at me from across the room. And that's why I have the opinions that I do about giving gifts as an apology or as a way to smooth something over. Um, He would cancel on me all the time. He wouldn't say I love you unless I said it first. He stopped showing me affection, and he penalized me for being happy. I got a job and I was so happy about this job, my current workplace, and his response was very angry and passive aggressive, and it snatched all of my happiness away. I ended up getting sick off of so stupid. Ended up getting sick off of clindamycin antibiotics, and I was in the hospital for 4 days. And he was nowhere to be seen. I mean, he did call me and wasn't very nice. He was very dismissive, and I've mentioned having depression and anxiety and suffering from that. And when that kicks up for me, I don't sleep. So I wasn't sleeping. I was in a lot of physical pain because it gave me C. diff colitis, to be more specific. And I was in a lot of pain, and my stomach hurt, and I couldn't eat, and it hurt to move. And I was having allergic reaction from the antibiotics, so that was fun. That I was in there for antibiotics making me sick, and then antibiotics to cure me made me have an allergic reaction. It was a great time, and he was nowhere to be seen because what he had was worse. And I was caught between, yes, that makes logical sense, and just wanting my partner to give a crap. But he didn't. And I wish I could say that was when I ended it, but I didn't because I'm an INTJ and I logically understood. And I tend to follow logic over my heart. And I learned a very valuable lesson about finding balance between your head and your heart because I should have ended that relationship much sooner. But how can you be mad at someone or upset at someone for, not feeling well? And because they don't feel well, they don't make time for you because they have to watch out for their own health. They can't be there for you. It I had a very hard time accepting that what I felt was valid, that what I felt was okay, and that our relationship wasn't a relationship. When you can go months without seeing each other and you live only 20 minutes away, there's a problem. When you can go days to weeks without talking to each other and you live only 20 minutes away and you haven't seen each other in months, there's a problem. And for the very first time, I realized that emotions are in fact important, that I do have them. I love very deeply, too deeply, it feels like sometimes. And I'm not immune to manipulation, and I'm not immune to being hurt, and I'm not immune to having my feelings hurt. And after him, I've been in just this weird self discovery stage where I felt very empty and vacant for a long time. Like I just had no emotional energy to handle anything or handle anyone. And I probably seemed very spaced out to my friends and family. But maybe they didn't notice because, to be honest, I'm quiet in social gatherings anyway. Um, but it was a rough time. And now I just have been looking back on what I did wrong, what they did wrong, and what neither of us did wrong, but was just life doing what life does best, which is crapping on the whole situation. So I know this video wasn't uplifting in the slightest, it wasn't happy in the slightest. My story is still ongoing, it's not complete. And if I'm being honest, I feel very hopeful. I do want love. I do want to find just that relationship someday where There is a sense of security there, but not a sense of contentment, where we're constantly growing and learning together, and that regardless of what personality types, because if you want something bad enough and you love someone, you can make anything work. And that's what I want, is just somebody that no matter our differences, that he won't be intimidated by me or scared by me, and that I won't be intimidated or scared by him. And I'm still learning and still healing and still working through my past traumas. And I wouldn't say that I'm like 100% healed. Honestly, who is? Um, I don't expect for my partner to be 100% healed, but a thing I've definitely learned is I can't be their only source of strength or their only source of happiness. They need to have something outside of me, something outside of our relationship. And I know people say INTJs, it's like having a business transaction. But I've always actually thrown myself into relationships full heartedly. And even as scared as I was, you know, I don't think it ever felt like a business transaction on their end. I've never had that said to me. But perhaps my next one may feel like a business transaction. I don't know. That's probably many years out. I have a lot of things I'm focusing on right now, and I just, one of those things being myself still. But I mean, you can't really blame someone for wanting to take their time and wanting to go slow. And all I can hope for is that there's people out there who can be patient enough for an INTJ and for an INTJ like me to just allow us to open up at our own pace instead of trying to force it and trying to pry us open. So I've rambled enough. I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and that it helps shed some light on why I view romantic relationships the way I do, why I feel like INTJs are not this emotionless, expressionless, robotic thing. We are people, and we are people who have experienced very traumatic things that have shaped us. And just because you can't see that shape right off the bat, just because you can't see those scars right off the bat, doesn't mean that they're not there. So if you're not an INTJ, just keep that in mind if you ever meet an INTJ. And regardless of what personality type somebody is, don't punish someone for wanting to get to know you and for not wanting to charge full speed ahead. So, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.